Let's talk business, game devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 65 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with the best people in our industry to learn how they got started, the obstacles they face, and the tools they use for success. And now let's chat with today's future guest, Jake DiGennaro. Jake, it's a game time. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
Awesome. He is the Senior Business Development Manager at Virtuos Games, which is the leading video game content production company specializing in game development and AAA 3D art production. He is tasked with coordinating critical projects for clients like Sony and Blizzard to optimize their pipeline, identify opportunities, and develop solutions. So go ahead, Jake, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Yeah, sure. So I got into games when... It's been about 10 years now. I started pursuing a career in game development in some way, shape, or form when I was a junior in college, essentially. I was kind of going through the motions. I was a business admin with a focus in marketing degree here in Northern California. And over Christmas holiday, my younger brother kind of posed to me, like, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I'm like, well, I'm going to go get a job doing marketing. And he's like, yeah, but marketing what? And I was like, I don't know. We kind of were chatting about it and stuff like that. And he's like, well, why don't you, try to pursue a game or a career in games? I was like, you can't do that. Games are made by like magical fairies that exist in Never Never Land. Like, you can't just get a job in game development. You have to have like an uncle whose buddy is like the CEO of Activision or something like that. So, I just kind of started looking at stuff and scrubbing around little forums and reading as much as I could and reading up on following some of the major sites like Gamasutra, which has kind of a development angle and has some stuff in terms of job placement and internships, and started reading GameIndustry.biz and like all that stuff, tried to get myself up to speed on how some of the aspects of the industry worked. And then I just kind of lucked into a job. There was a small company that I ended up working for a few years in Northern California that was based out of the same town that I went to college in. And I started as an intern doing basically, scut work and washing cars and doing online forum management and going to trade shows, and was on my feet for 8 hours a day doing the same presentation and loop. But little by little, I just kind of asked questions and learned and found a path that kind of carved out a niche for myself inside of the industry and kept kind of plugging away.
I'm curious, were you into games before that, though?
Absolutely. Games for me is kind of a lifelong passion. I started playing games. I was probably 3 or 4, picking up my first NES controller and everything along those lines, and I've stuck with it ever since. And sadly, I have a little bit less time for games these days than I used to. But the adulting and responsibilities and all that fun stuff. But, I still try to carve out, 3 to 5 hours a week to pick up, whether it's knocking out a couple rounds of Overwatch or whether it's diving into the latest kind of open world game or playing a couple chapters of Uncharted or whatever, be it just kind of whatever's fun and kind of suits the mood. And it's important from, for what I do and really for anybody in the game industry to stay abreast on what your peers are doing and what the new bar is and what is kind of catching on. And it's such a fast moving industry in every regard that if you don't play some of the stuff, then you're just going to be left behind.
Yeah, you got to know what games are out there, what's like the trends and stuff. So yeah, you definitely got to play those games. And I'm curious, so you said like you lucked into this job position, like you found it on Gamasutra, or how exactly did you find it?
I found it on Craigslist, actually. It was, they were basically just looking for a summer intern to do some grunt work around the office. And I signed on for about 2 months to, like I said, do all sorts of random tasks. Kind of whatever the office needed at the time. It was a team of about 6 or 7 people at the time beyond me. And then after those 2 months, when the school year, I started in the summer in July, and when my senior year started, I just kind of, they signed me on and I stuck with them and worked there all through my senior year, and then made some moves from there and went to work at Telltale, and then ended up back at that same company about a year later. So
that's what I'm talking about. You're passionate about game, and then you got a job in the game industry. So that's really cool. So let's go ahead and touch upon your main area of expertise. Can you expand upon what being a business development is all about?
So, I mean, it's different for every team and every company and stuff like that. I mean, business development is kind of a broad blanket term that is saying, generally speaking, people in business development are tasked with going out, getting to know peers and companies either in proximity or in competition or whatever, and being tapped into what's going on, and then finding potential partners to either partner on a project with, or produce content with, or go into some sort of an R&D agreement with. There's a ton of different forms that it takes. I mean, you've got people that are doing business development for Sony that are going out and finding third-party games to publish. You've got people like me that are working in the service industry that are going out and finding developers that we can support to help bring their games to market. You've got people that work at third-party or independent developers that are going out to find new projects, the next work for hire, or to pitch a proposal or a game design concept to a publisher to get funding to do something that's original or unique. It takes a lot of different forms and comes in a lot of different flavors.
How do you advertise yourself or your company? How do you advertise yourself as business development where you're trying to find opportunities for another company? So do you, go out to them or advertise to them to let you know what you bring to the table?
I mean, we do some advertising. Most of it is in the form of, we do a lot of trade shows. So, whether it's Gamescom or E3 or Games Connection or Tokyo Game Show, which is going on right about now, we try to be present at a lot of the major industry events. We're lucky, the company that I'm with now, we're lucky to be in a position where our name is fairly well known inside of the game development industry, and we have a good track record that we can present to people. So a lot of it is just sitting down and having a conversation. Who are you guys and what you do? Who's Virtuos and what do we do? And where do those two areas and two kind of trajectories cross paths in a way that we could collaborate on something? So a lot of it really starts with an email or a call or an introduction from a peer or whatever, be it mutual acquaintance that says hey Tim, this is Jake. He said that, or I know that you said that you needed this thing, and we've worked with them before, and you should probably talk. And then maybe getting a phone call, maybe I get in a plane and fly out there. It takes a lot of different forms.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. So what is something we probably don't know about video game business development that we should?
It's time consuming. It's kind of, it's kind of one of those in the trenches kind of positions. We're quietly kind of on the forefront of a lot of the projects that you see come to market in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of the conversations start with somebody in some sort of a business development role in some way, shape, or form. So whether that's, us working with a new, Virtuos working with a new partner, or if it's, the next big independent console exclusive that comes to Xbox or something like that, a lot of it starts with some form of quote unquote business development personnel going out and starting a conversation, and then going from there and seeing where, like I said, those trajectories cross over and what you can do together.
And I'm assuming there's a lot of contracts involved too.
Yep, there's redlining is a disproportionate portion of my day. So,
what mistakes do you see people in your position making that's most common, or even at a pro level? What kind of mistakes do you think people make?
What kind of mistakes do people make? Assumptions, I think, is a good thing to kind of point out. Is whether that's a developer that's been around for 5, 10, 15, or sometimes even 20 or more years, assuming that they're working with a new partner, or assuming that, somebody that they've kind of got on a joint venture with knows all of the intricacies of what their studio is. There's a lot of internal knowledge and internal practices that people internalize, for lack of better words. And what you do is you end up having communication breakdowns. We do it this way, and we just assume that you would do it that way. It's like, well, you're doing it a very peculiar way, and nobody ever said anything about that. So no, we didn't do it that way. So it's communication and not assuming that everybody knows everything. Having more conversations, spending the time to do the due diligence, spending the time to put together documentations and review things together and ask questions in both directions and stuff like that, and just ensure that everybody's on the same page before you get into bed together.
Yeah, that communication is key. And like you say, if you're going to partner up with another company, you have to make sure y'all could actually collaborate.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So what are your key principles overall for better business development?
Diligence and consistency. If you say don't say you're going to do something that you can't deliver on. If you can't do something, don't say that you can. No, we can't, or no, we don't want to, are completely valid answers. You're better off waiting for the next pitch than just swinging something that's way outside the strike zone. Just knowing where your limits are. And then, on the diligent side of that is follow up. Don't let things just sit there. Don't wait until, the molehill becomes a mountain if there's problems and stuff like that. Like, get in there, get your hands dirty, get everybody on the phone, take the time out of your day to do a walkthrough with everything and kind of get everybody on the same page. You're really potentially a liaison between the two different teams that are working together. You're the ones that started them talking together, so be involved.
So I could definitely tell it sounds like you got some bad moments in your career with dealing with other companies. So let's talk about, what was the worst moment of your career? That one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and tell us that personal story.
Luckily I've had a pretty good run here at Virtuos, and there have been some headbanging moments and stuff like that, and some of it's caused by my own team. But if you talk about like really tough moments in my career, one that's always kind of jumped out to me was, prior to being at Virtuos, I was at another company, and we worked with a lot of independent developers and to publish their titles. And I was young. I was probably 24, 25 at the time. And there was a project that we had signed, and I got really personally vested in and attached to at kind of a fundamental level in terms of what I think a good game can be and what this game can be and this, that, and the other thing. And ultimately, for a variety of reasons, that game ended up being canceled. And it was really hard for me to kind of get through that and get over that. Is that the people around me that I was working with, that I considered peers and colleagues, like, didn't see the thing that I saw. And I felt kind of slighted, like I wasn't, they didn't trust my opinion, and they didn't trust this, that, and the other thing. And it's one of those, you have to be able to hold things at arm's length, like be invested, but don't turn it into the sky is falling if things don't happen. Because anybody who spent any time looking at game development knows that for every project that comes to market, there are 2 or 3 that get killed a month in, 3 months in, a year and a half in. There's however many stories that you can go out there and look about, a game that was 3 years in development, however many millions in, and some executive somewhere, for whatever reason, probably very valid ones, decided that, it's time to put the kibosh on this. So yeah, it was something to kind of learn from.
Oh man, yeah, a game that you heavily invested in just get canceled. What do you want to make sure game does take away from that? Because for the past episode, we have been telling game devs, just keep in mind that your game could be canceled for whatever reason at any time. And I still think that some people, it's tough to, I guess, deal with that. Like, how can we game devs deal with that situation? Like, what could we do personally to, I guess, let that pass, I guess?
To be honest with you, it's just something everybody has to run up against at some point. It's going to happen. If somebody went an entire 30, 40-year career without getting a game canceled, they would be the huge exception to the rule. So it's going to happen. Be aware that it's going to happen. It may be the thing that you're working on right now. It may be the thing that, 2 products down the line or 2 projects down the line, that's the one that doesn't make it to market or gets killed for, because the market shift, because the budgets ran out, because the publisher shifted this, that, or the other thing, because it's not fun. That there's a lot of good ideas that on paper seem great, and then when you make them into a video game, it's just like there's nothing here. So know that it's going to happen, and know that the sun will come up tomorrow, and there will be another project. That there will be something else to get excited about. I've gone from what was a very low in my career and in my personal life to nowadays I get to work on some of the highest profile, projects and IPs, and not just games, but in film and in TV and stuff like that. And, if I was to ask that, whatever it was, 24, 25-year-old version of myself, it was like, I don't even know if I wanted to do this anymore because I was so disappointed and frustrated. So the sun will come up tomorrow.
The sun will come up tomorrow. Keep that in mind, Game Dust. What is the worst advice do you see or hear being told in your world?
I wouldn't call it I don't know if there's a single point that jumps out as like the worst advice. I would say as a piece of advice relative to some of the things that I see from colleagues and peers and stuff like that is don't get into the mindset that something is somebody else's job, that whether you're an artist or a programmer or biz dev or whatever, a producer, don't get into that mindset where this is what I do and I exist inside this box and there's this thing in proximity to me that we're all kind of up against the wire and everybody's fully tasked, and there's this card sitting on the Kanban sheet and like nobody's picking it up. It's like, if you think you can do it, just pick it up and do it. Learn something new. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. Like, there's nothing that says a producer can't try putting a model together in Maya, or can't, spend some time on their personal time learning some basic coding and do some scripting or something like that. Like,
I like that because you're basically helping out the team as well. So if you see like a task that no one's trying to solve, or a problem that someone's not trying to solve, you can pick it up yourself, learn it, and try to do it for the team. I guess you to take one for the team. I don't know how you want to call it, but.
And to be honest with you, sometimes it opens up new avenues inside of game development that you didn't know that you would enjoy. I came in as an intern doing PR and marketing stuff, and that was what my focus was. And then over time, I started picking up some, they needed somebody to go to a trade show and evaluate a bunch of potential developers, and I did. And I wrote a big report about 80 different titles that I looked at, and here are the good things about it. And I'm just a dummy college kid, but this is my 2 cents. And that led to them being like, okay, at least he understands some of the fundamentals. Like, let's put him out there in the field and start having him do this more. And then I got involved with signing, and then it was publishing, and then it was overseeing production as a production coordinator, and then it was a publishing producer. And that led to me understanding more and more about everything from budgeting to development pipelines to contract language and everything in between, that I could have just sat in a bubble and done press releases and, what's now, viral marketing attempts for 40 years. And I never would have known if I didn't just try doing something that wasn't something I was familiar with.
Definitely keep learning, push yourself to learn new things. Yeah, it opens up a lot of different avenues for sure. What have you changed your mind about in the last few years, and why?
I'm interested to see where some of the emerging technologies go. I went from being very enthusiastic to being on the VR and AR thing to being very pessimistic about it to being optimistic about it again, and I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth. I'm excited to see what those new avenues for experiences can prove to be. I think they have a long way to mature and stuff like that, but the last, I'd say, year and a half, I was particularly pessimistic on a lot of the VR initiatives and stuff like that were kind of going around, and all the VC money that was being thrown at things. But now that the craze has kind of settled down and the cash grab has gone away a little bit, there's a lot of cool things that are starting to bubble to the surface. And so I'm starting to come around on that platform again. And I'm excited for some of the things that, we'll start seeing, getting early glimpses at in the next, in some cases, 5-6 months out. And in some cases, it's still, a year or two out that they've got a long time to cook. But there's something to that platform. There's something really special about it. And when you start to see it, and you start to see people that are passionate about doing something that pushes the medium as opposed to just getting something to market because it's the hot, sexy new thing that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I was really optimistic about the VR, and then I'm like reading stories about how it's like declining and people are losing interest and stuff. And I just think VR is just an amazing technology. Like, the potential it has, it takes you out of this world and it brings you into like a fantasy world. How cool is that? And like, it can like, read your body movement and stuff. It's insane. So I was really surprised that it didn't take off. Maybe because, you know, it was just the price point or it's not wireless yet. I don't know what it needs to do to hit that mainstream, people.
Yeah, I mean, it's form factor and its price, and you know, the coolest thing that I've gotten a chance to play around with, for me, has been the Hololens from Microsoft. That thing is comfortable and cool and does just crazy things, and it's utterly unaffordable right now at $3,000 or whatever it is. And it's, you know, Microsoft has admittedly said that it's still a ways out from being, you know, retail ready, but the potential of it is just, it's limitless, to be honest with you. So, you know, it's one of those things to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah, it's like that futuristic, I think, is it like where you touch it's like a hologram, right? Or how does it, I don't know how to explain it.
It's augmented reality where it's got basically depth of field, and you use hand motions and stuff like that to interact with an environment. For example, the kind of one that, a really good entry level one that everybody talks about is one called, I think it's called like Robot Raid or something, where you put it on and it maps your room, and then it has like an overlay on the walls, and you see the walls like bust open and these big flying like alien bug robot things come flying out, and you pinch your fingers together and it shoots lasers at them, and you have to shoot it. It's like a little high score thing. And they come around from all different around the room, and it's just cool. It's a totally different way to interact with games and with interactive entertainment, and it's unlike anything that I've ever experienced using a controller. So that's the stuff that's kind of exciting to me.
Man, I really want to play that. I haven't tried HoloLens yet, so I definitely got to try that. Now that you're more experienced and better, Jake, what do you think was the best investment you've made? And it can be investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
For me, I've worked remotely predominantly throughout the course of my career. I was working for a German company for a long time, and now I work for an international company primarily based out of Asia. And so getting into a routine and sitting down with myself and being honest and saying you were accountable for your own productivity and stuff like that, and not making the decision that you were self-driving as opposed to somebody else laying out a schedule for you, and here's where you need to be, and here's what needs to get done by this date in order for us all to do this thing. It's just taking the reins and controlling your own role in the team, and you know, kind of controlling your own destiny to a degree. You know, I'm in a very kind of a unique position being based remotely, but having that self-accountability.
Do you do something in particular to build up that habit, to build up that self-discipline, or like you read a book or something that helped you out? Like, how did you build up that self-discipline?
I just, part of it is getting into a routine, just kind of doing, you know, not exactly the same thing every morning, but kind of having a standard kind of process that I go through, and getting up and taking the dogs for a walk, and then cooking myself some breakfast, and then sitting down and doing a first pass at emails, and then, you know, digging into some of the more complicated stuff. And then, you know, there's kind of a way that I go about the beginning of my day, and it puts me in a kind of a familiar mindset every day. And then not getting frustrated is not, you know, allowing the first thing that I read in the morning that might be troublesome to derail everything. Is being able to put that stuff aside and say, like, okay, that's going to take a big chunk of time or a big chunk of my energy for the day, so I'm going to table that for later and get through some of this kind of more minutia related stuff and push these contracts around and all that kind of fun stuff, and then circle back on it.
Yeah, time management. And like you said earlier, you basically win the morning, you win the day. That's how I heard one of the quote.
Yeah.
What are your favorite instructional books or resources like that will teach you how to do business development?
To teach you how to do business development, I have been lucky enough to kind of learn by doing a lot of the time. I've had a number of colleagues and mentors and peers that have at some points in time taken me under their wing. I don't have any specific books that I would point anyone towards relative to business development, but I would say when you get an opportunity to be in a room with somebody who's been around the block, ask questions, offer to take them out to lunch and just probe them. Say like, hey, I know you did this thing. What was that like? In college, they called it doing an informational interview or something like that, where it wasn't necessarily about publishing something or making a podcast or whatever be it. It was just getting getting a glimpse into a world and trying to glean little tips and tricks and advice and stuff like that from people that have taken the lumps before you. So, there's a lot of great books and videos and courses and everything out there, but the richest resource that any game developer has is the people around them. So it really is a community. I mean, GDC in and of itself is a phenomenal convention that is full of some of the brightest minds and most challenging projects that have ever made it through, or in some cases not made it through. And so, if you want to, quote, read a book or go somewhere, is purchase a GDC Vault Pass. I know they're like couple hundred bucks or something like that. And you have a wealth of people talking about amazing things, whether it's technology or whether it's design or whether it's narrative or whether it's production or whatever. So yeah, when you get in the room, ask questions and then go listen to what other people have said.
Yes, ask your peers, ask mentors, and definitely hit up those game conferences to learn a lot more. I'm definitely going to start doing that for sure now, especially with GDC and the Austin Game Conference. Definitely going to start doing those things. What was the greatest idea you had to date, like an aha moment?
The greatest idea I had to date. Structuring my inbox so that I can keep track of all the insanity. For me, in my world and stuff like that, and the number of projects and teams and stuff that I deal with, is probably just having a process, having a way that even if it's just for you and your personal little bubble to kind of keep everything organized, don't let things get away from you. And, when I sat down a few years ago when, I was taking on a larger and larger role in this company in particular that just has so many moving pieces, is structure your work environment. Because it will change dramatically how productive you are.
Have you ever thought of hiring like someone to do it for you? The email part, at least?
I have been told that there are people that are very good at it, but I tend to be a little bit of a control freak. So I like it my way, and I don't want it somebody else's way.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
And that's, like I said, that's kind of part of it is being honest with yourself and how you work and how your brain works, and figuring out a way that you can quickly access and pull information. I mean, I have colleagues that have entirely different processes that when they talk about, how they do stuff and how they manage it, it makes my head spin and makes my blood curdle, and it's like, how do you not go insane? And they're just like, this is how I work. I'm like, yeah, that's probably fine, because the way that I work would probably drive somebody else equally insane.
Yeah, I used to be like a huge control freak too of how I do my work, but then I slowly eventually learned how just to let go, like I delegate it, I guess you could say, let someone else do it for me. So it does take a while, but yeah, I understand the control freak part. It's like, you don't want the things that you've been working on and organizing for a long time just to like mess up or someone touch it or something like that. Okay, so what the game industry is booming now, and aside from what we touched upon about VR and Hololens and AR, what else are you excited about today in the game industry?
The industry is getting bigger and smaller at the same time. You're seeing, you can go to VentureBeat and read an article every other day on how much bigger the mobile market is going to be a year from now and 2 years from now, and how, NPD just said, console sales are up 3% year over year, whatever be it. Like, it's getting bigger. There's no avoiding that. But at the same time, the hurdles in terms of working with distributed teams around the world and being able to, you see, great things coming out of Southeast Asia and out of Eastern Europe and stuff like that, whereas before they wouldn't have had access to the means to bring things to market. I was just reading, I just got the other day a book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, which is, I advise anybody to pick up and take a read. It's not a biz dev book, but it's a great book about some of the war stories from game development, from some of the really successful titles over the last few years. And the guy who had done Stardew Valley, and just how like one guy spent 5 years of his life, and one day he put it up on Steam, and we all know how successful it was. And, 10 years ago, that would have been impossible. I mean, you talk about the quote unquote indie successes 10 years ago. It was like, you had like Braid, which make it onto XBLA, which you have to go through a certification process. You have to do this and do that, and then you have to bring it to market. And there's all these other things that take into consideration. This way, the guy just like put it up on Greenlight, Steam Greenlight. Some people liked it, and then he put code up on database somewhere, and dollars started coming in, and he was a huge overnight success. And that just wouldn't have happened years ago. So I think you'll see more PUBG for that matter. Like, geez, like, who saw that coming? And that's what I'm excited about, is that it doesn't take, $100 million and a team of 300 to bring something, to put something out in the world that brings joy to sometimes a couple thousand, and in some cases several million people.
And what's cool about that is it's early access and too, so people are willing to spend that money to, I guess, help beta test the game or test out the game for the developers.
Yeah,
that is, to me, that concept is really insane to me. It's like they're paying for like a beta test or a demo or something.
You're getting people to pay you to be your QA department.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, that kind of stuff, and thank you to Notch and Minecraft for being the kind of pioneers in that format. But when I bought an alpha whatever version of that on Notch's website 10 years ago or 8 years ago or whatever it was for $5. And at the time I was like, this is a quirky little thing that he's doing. Like, I can give him some money to keep doing this neat thing. And lo and behold, that's now like a pillar in game development now. Yeah,
it's like, there's just so many different ways you could put your game up and get attention. Like itch.io, Steam. It's so many opportunities out there. You just got to put your game out there. And of course, you got to market it as well to get that attention.
Yeah. So access to marketplaces and access to and you've got Kickstarter and Fig and all those things. Like it's a brave new world right now.
Ooh, yes, game devs. That's just more opportunities for you to make games and put it out there. And speaking of games, what is the one game that influenced you the most and why?
That influenced me the most? The ones that always jump out at me are like, when I was younger, it was like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII and Mario RPG and stuff of that kind of nature. I was a big, JRPG-ish player growing up, and the stories and how much character and depth went into it. Fast forward quite a few years, and when I was in my kind of formative college years, it was things along the lines of Mass Effect 2. I thought was kind of a watershed moment for game design. BioShock was one of the games that really, I played that game and walked away from it and was kind of like, I could help make this. And I could spend the rest of my life helping make something that is this cool and affected me this much. And like, I walked away being so just full of excitement and joy and whatever, I don't have a quote unquote favorite game, because every time, if I was to put that kind of stick in the sand, it kind of says that there isn't still good things happening. Like if you had told me a year ago that the new Zelda game was going to put me out on the floor and just have me drooling and just like in awe of what they did, like there's no way I would have been like, whatever, it's Zelda, it's another Zelda game. And then I played that game. I was like, all right, this is a masterpiece. This is just what open world games are going to be now. So, that's the great thing about it, is every time somebody does something great, it just inspires and challenges somebody else to do something great in their own way. And, plagiarism is the most sincere form of flattery, but, gleaning little pieces and little chunks of stuff in order to put your own spin and own flavor on it is kind of what we're all here to do.
Definitely. And Breath of the Wild, I felt like it renewed, I wouldn't say renewed, but it definitely boosted my motivation to do something in the game industry. Like, that game is just so dang good. And now Super Mario Odyssey is coming out, and that game looks amazing as well. So there's a lot of good games that came out this year. So many good games.
There's a lot of good games, both artistically and ambition wise, and we've still got some good stuff ahead. Like, I've been frothing at the mouth over Cuphead for what feels like forever. And maybe hopefully that game finally comes out this year.
I hope so too.
But I mean, there's, it's one of those things. Like, there's always going to be cool stuff to look forward to, and it's about, figuring out what inspires you and what makes you smile, and then going from there.
Definitely play those games. Yes. Awesome. The show isn't over yet, game devs. We have reached a crunch time. But before that, I want to quickly mention about the free giveaway that I'm teaming up with Cubebrush to give 2 lucky winners $50 of in-store credit each. All you have to do is send me proof that you shared my podcast by emailing me at tony@gamedevloadout.com. You can just send me a screenshot of you sharing it, or you can tag me on social media. This giveaway ends November 12th, so don't miss this opportunity and share it with your peers. And for disclosure, I am not getting paid for this. And now, Jake, are you ready to crush it and release this show?
Sure, why not? Let's go for it.
What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
Having no idea how to get into it.
Ooh. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Just circling back on what I said, is diligence and personal accountability.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Just keep on. Pick yourself off the ground when you get knocked down, because you're going to get knocked down a lot of times doing what we do for a living.
Yep, it's definitely hard. So you got to build up that, I guess, thick skin and just keep pushing forward.
Thick skin is another really good piece of advice that I've had relayed to me many times in my early days. Is don't take things personally, and you're all in this. You're all in the same ship together, and you're all putting out the same thing as a team, and you're either going to sink or swim together. So, cultivate a sense of camaraderie and an openness and transparency with the people that you're spending your life next to.
Yeah, build up that meaningful relationship. How has a failure set you up for a later success?
Like you said, just kind of getting back up and going back to that story I had about that game that got canceled is knowing, how close to get and how not close to get, and that the sun will rise tomorrow, and that, just keep on soldiering forward.
And in general, what resources should we game devs use?
Find your news platform. I mean, whether you're a IGN or a Kotaku or a Polygon or whatever be it, like, find a place where some of the editors kind of speak to the way that you think about stuff. Check in on it regularly, whether it's once a week, a few times a week, every day. Keep up abreast on what's going on. And then in terms of resources of game dev, like, go get the free version of Unity and just start screwing around with it, or the free version of Lumberyard and just start screwing around with it, and just kind of figure out, like, what is a game and how do things connect to each other. Like, there's how many success stories of somebody like the guy who did Gunpoint in like one of the simplest game engine and game maker, and he made an amazing game, and he had never done any game design or development or programming before, and he basically holed himself up in a room for 3 years and documented the whole thing online, which is a really interesting read, by the way. So just tinker.
Yeah, I like that. Tinker. Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world, and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of, and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become successful in the game industry?
First of all, I'd see what I could get for that laptop and trade it in for a desktop. I mean, it first and foremost is assuming I knew no one, and that I had some leniency to spend some time figuring out, where and what, is start going to the trade shows and go to meetups and go to, whether it's a GDC or whether it's an E3 or whether it's a TwitchCon or whether it's a BlizzCon or whatever, like, start surrounding yourself with people that are equally passionate about what you're trying to do. And, sometimes you'll meet somebody completely randomly that has a complementary skill set, or guys start riffing on an idea, and it kind of goes from there. And you never really know, when you're going to find someone that inspires you and that challenges you and that can kind of raise your game alongside you're raising their game. And so it's colleagues and peers, man. Like, this industry is all about the people that you surround yourself with and how determined you are to stick it out through the tough times. That's the absolute, bottom line of how these things eventually get made.
Man, yeah, you gotta put yourself out there and meet people and network. And yeah, just keep pushing forward. We have reached the end, Jake. Go ahead and give us one last parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Keep on keeping on. Don't give up. Things are going to be hard, and know that there are things that I've seen published by some of the I don't know if it was Gama Sutra or whoever, saying like the average career of a video game developer, designer, whatever you want to call it, person in the game industry is something like 2.5 years, because people burn out and they're not willing to kind of push through that wall. So know that things are going to get hard, and if this is what you want to do, then just stick it out. It will get easier. You will get to know people around you. You will gain more experience and learn life lessons and learn development lessons by going through those kind of tough points. And once you kind of get through that first half a decade or so, then the world really starts to open up. So know that the first few years can be hard, but it's, as somebody who's coming up on double digits any month now in terms of years in the industry, and knowing that even at double digits, I'm still a baby by comparison to some people that have been doing this 30 plus years. It's absolutely worth it. And there's nothing quite like waking up in the morning and being excited to go to work and to do something, as opposed to, how many friends, family members, and peers and stuff like that are like, oh, I can't wait for Friday at 5:00 so I can get the heck out of here and go do whatever. It's like, you'll find me at 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday banging out emails because I'm excited about the stuff that I get to be a part of.
That's what I want right there. To have a job where I just wake up every morning, enjoy what I'm doing, and like you say, not be like, oh, it's Friday, yeah, it's Friday. Like, I don't want to be like that no more. It should be like that. Like, I should be enjoying every single day.
Yeah, well, if I told the 7-year-old version of myself that I wasn't having a good time working on Star Wars movies and TV shows and video games, then I think the 7-year-old version would beat the crap out of the 32-year-old version of myself.
Now, how can we connect with you?
You can always ping me on LinkedIn. I mean, email's on there, and I check it pretty regularly and stuff like that. So if you've got questions, feel free to reach out. Or if anybody feels like doing a little traveling abroad to work in Asia or Europe or something like that, we're always looking for exciting new prospects. And we're a big team that does a lot of stuff, and we're always in the hunt for talent.
There you go, Game Dust. Like, Jake just basically offered you a job opportunity right there. So definitely
we'll see where that goes. See how much trouble I got myself in.
So definitely take him on that offer. Jake, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, and for that we are truly grateful, and we will catch you next time.
Happy to be here.
I appreciate you for listening, Game Devs. Knowledge is only potential, power, execution is the game. I hope you are putting what you learned to good use. Check out my website, GameDevLoadout.com, for all the show notes, and subscribe to the podcast if you enjoyed the episode. Also, don't forget about the free giveaway as well. In the next episode, I interview Enrique Olivers from Bosa Studios, and we talk about how his company does game jams, marketing games, and much, much more. So I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.